here. So I always start with a quote, and that's exactly what I'm planning to do today as well. And let's make this interactive, because I think one of the things that I always do, I used to be like you. I've attended a lot of these sessions, and one of the things that I always noticed was in the transformation world, I think some of you can't see me, so I'll stand up. But in the transformation world, I noticed that whenever I attended a talk, I didn't see women as speakers. So that was the first time that I then raised my hand and I said, listen, I think I need to change that. One. The second is that I also realized most of these talks became a little too technical. So which is why I think I have tried to simplify and I think oversimplify. Which means that even when I present this to my 8-year-old daughter, she understands it. My husband's aunts, who are like in their 60s and 70s, they understand it. So which is why I try to make my talk a little more simplified. So bear with me, and we'll go through this together. It's going to be a bit of a nostalgia, if I can say so. And like I said, I'm going to start with a quote. So today my topic, I think, has been given as evolution through digital transformation. And specifically, my role has been that of delivering transformation global programs. So specifically, I'm going to talk about how that evolution in our day-to-day lives happen. Not in the corporate setting, not really what happens in a specific industry, but overall. Like something that you and I can relate. Anybody can relate, right? I mean, that's the idea. So when we look at evolution, I think the first thing that always comes to my mind, and I think most of us do, right? That whole thing about monkeys going on to becoming a human. Interestingly, that was not the only theory of evolution. A little backdrop always helps, right? So we think that we evolved from monkeys, but there are multiple theories. But because the data pointed like maybe it was the right thing in terms of evolution, we stuck with that theory. So that's exactly what happens even in the corporate world, right? If you look at any evolution of an organization, anything in terms of, oh, this is successful, you see some data related to it, and then you say, yes, this is how a company should evolve. The reality is, when you've had so many decades of experience like I did, there is never one formula. There is never one thing saying only data will prove the success of the company, or only facts will prove the success of the company, or only XYZ will prove the success of a team. The reality is that there's a lot more to it, and a lot more that goes into it. Which is why I decided not to use the evolution slide, which is what we typically use, which is the monkey to the human being. When we talk about transformation, some of the things that are really, really important, and this is where I'll simplify it for you guys, there are multiple transformations. And if you look at it, like there are so many spaces. There is digital transformation, I'm talking about cultural transformation, sustainability transformation, because that's a very big thing right now. But there are so many other transformations as well. Leadership transformation, personal transformation, there is how teams transform as they go through this journey together. And the interesting thing is it's not like a short thing. You do this and say by the end of 12 months, you're transformed. Transformation is a journey, which means you never ever say I've arrived. So just because in that evolution, again go back to that picture of evolution, if you go back to the evolution, do you say that a human being and that's it, we are done? No. The interesting thing, and I was listening to a TED talk while coming here, I always do that because it kind of motivates me. So I was listening to this guy and he said, when you talk about evolution, you always look at the last chapters. Your organization today, your team today, the work that you do today, you remember today. What you've done in the last year, last 6 months, last 3 years, last 5 years. Even if you ask me from my career perspective, I'll instantly tell you that, listen, I've been in transformation. That's not the reality. I never started with transformation. I moved to transformation eventually. So which is where I think it's very important to kind of even resonate with that. So evolution, again, whatever your companies, your teams, whatever you're going through, from a digital transformation point of view, you will only see the current window. But the reality is there is a history to it, and there is going to be a future to it, right? So there is both the aspects. So remember, there is a 3-dimension over here, and in a very different context. Of course, customer-centric transformation, and let's just talk about each of these. And like I said, I'm going to give you some really tidbit examples which all of us have done. As a child, I was asked to, like, my daily tasks were to go and, not daily, but almost like twice a week, to walk across from my house and go to this bank, a nationalized bank, and my dad would be like, this is your passbook and you have to withdraw so much money. And I felt very responsible, right? Oh my God, my parents have given me the biggest responsibility of life. I would take the passbook, I would count, I would stand in the queue, I would fill up that form, and that whole activity. Fast forward to today. I took my daughter to a bank. And why? Because for a visa form. Not really I needed to go to a bank. Not at all. The last time I visited a bank was a visa form, and before that was maybe the home loan. That's it. I have not visited a bank in, I don't know, a million years now. So the reality is I took her and I showed her, listen, you know what, we did this, and I made her stand, and she's looking at the teller and she's like, there's no queue, there's not a single person, why are we doing this? I think, no, I'll show you, we filled this form and I did this as a child. I take her then to an ATM which was right outside Citibank on MG Road, and I took her to an ATM which was right outside, and I said, listen, you know, you do this, you have this pin and you insert this card and the money pops out and instantly it's all taken care of. Why would you stand in the queue? As a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old she was, she's like, why would you stand in a queue, do that? It took you like 10 minutes to do, even though there was nobody in the bank, and you're so excited about it. Look here, we did it in like 30 seconds. She said, I would do this because I've seen these machines everywhere. So if a child can understand the advantages of having a digital transformation, you can imagine how most of our families, even though our parents would say, I am not a technology person, most of our parents today play games on their mobile, right? And I think they're probably better at it than I am. I definitely am not. My mom will share, every few months she'll be like, did you try this new thing? Did you try this? I'm like, I don't know these. Where are you finding these things? So she's the first one who introduced me to memes. She's the first one who introduced me to so many other things on WhatsApp. And I was like, I had no idea there were so many more features. So that's the beauty of it. The children, the grown-ups, everybody is used to it. And this is where it is interesting, right? You only see the ATM and then you're like, the ATM doesn't work. Then where are we talking about digital transformation? There is digital transformation. If you go back historically, we've transformed. It's just that we didn't know that. Or rather, we are not acknowledging it today. Yes, is there more to do? Of course there is more to do. And that is why I said it's a journey. It's never something, like if you're done with this, even 100 years from now, if I were to present, of course I won't, somebody else will. But the point is, they are not going to show you this. They'll be like, oh, guess what? There used to be these ATMs, and today there is this. And people will be like, wow, such a nice thing to do, right? So that's the reality. That's the reality, right? I mean, I've stopped going to ATMs as well. That's the reality today. So I've stopped going to banks, and then I've stopped going to ATMs. And I still survive, and I still thrive. And it's not like I need cash, hard cash at all. That's the reality. So that is where it is. So this is what it takes you from one place to another. Now, I'll show you another example, right? Like I said, I'm going to simplify this. This is where I think it needs to get interesting. If you look at the manufacturing world, everybody says, oh, manufacturing as an industry does not change. There is no transformation. There is no evolution. The reality is sometimes evolution happens by choice and sometimes by a push. The good part is, in this case, it happened by a push. Not the right circumstances, but yes, COVID did change a lot of the way we do things. And transformation was at the top of the game, I think, during the COVID times, because they had to push themselves. There was no choice. Every industry was like, what else can I do? How else can I be out there? How else can I still meet my demands? So if you look at it, manufacturing, right? That's the world that we used to live in. Somebody would be doing something, they're very much focused on, of course there is hygiene, there is taking control of quality and everything, there is all of it. There is still premium products that were getting made and handmade. What happened during COVID? Yes, some of these manufacturing companies went back, they were still trying to figure out how to make it happen. The reality today is, there is a cobot. And a cobot meaning, there's human and there is a bot. Which means that I can have a bot right now sending out emails, specifically acting on tasks which are mundane for me, which are not something that I enjoy, and which are not something that I want to do. So manufacturing as well went through this. And the reality is that that's where they have gone ahead and seen a transformation. Now, if you were to talk about this is a cultural transformation, because an industry which is a little hard to penetrate managed to go through a transformation. And that's why it's a cultural transformation. It's like, I don't need a bot. Bots are going to take away the job. That's cultural transformation. From that to saying, I need a bot because I'm never going to have an assistant, or the reality is that I need an assistant. And everybody needs an assistant, let's be honest. Who doesn't? Ask anyone in the world, they need a personal assistant to get their life sorted. It's like at home, I would rather have a personal assistant managing all my cook, maid, blah, 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 groceries, everything, right? And the reality is at work also, I would really thrive if I had a personal assistant who would do all these chores that I don't like, right? That's where it is. So that's cultural transformation. Now let's talk about another example. If you really talk about it, most of the companies, when they build a strategy, do you remember how like about 5 years ago, even now in some companies it still happens, where sustainability is an independent effort. So is volunteering. So is like corporate social responsibility, as we call it as CSR, right? It's an independent thing. Like, oh yeah, we have our profits, we need to meet this. There is this requirement, we have to strategically achieve these goals. But the reality is that there is, okay, we also need to do this. But today, that's changing. Sustainability is becoming a part of the way we do things. Everything, even in the company that I am working with, HP, right now, sustainability, we have an exec level presence, because we want every single business from not to just say, oh, HP products, we'll package it an eco-friendly way, or they'll come in minimum plastic waste and they're recyclable. No, that's not enough. That's not enough. That is really the game changer, which is why sustainability transformation is the next big thing. And I've done a lot of talks on it. I mean, each of these topics independently can go on for hours. But I mean, it's just to, again, keep your minds open to it. So as you can see, the earlier strategy used to be like a very independent thing, social responsibility separate. You're talking about, basically environmental impact separately, saying, okay, this is what it is. But the reality today is it is all integrated. And that's just how it has to be, right? There's really no choice. And another easier example, I think all of us can relate to this, right? Do we know this? Did we experience this? We still do, right? In some places in India, we still do. The reality is that yes, you would walk into a traffic situation where you see a lot of pollution and you're like, oh, come on, where are we? But is that changing again in India? Yes. That's the reality. Sustainability transformation is the way to go. And I think India is doing a fantastic job when we talk about ethanol and all of that. So that's again a separate thing, but the reality is, this is the transformation that we're already going through. A good number of people have already moved from, say, having a two-wheeler which was, fuel-based, to an electric vehicle, which is amazing, which is fantastic. That's your transformation that is already happening. So, and again, keep this in mind, that when we talk about any of these examples, they're not independent by themselves. Which means that they're not like, oh, this one is not thinking about the customer, or this is only sustainable, or this is only cultural. It's obviously, like the triangle previous slide, very much together, a cohesive approach when you talk about transformation. So whenever you look at your teams, your organization, what you will have to see is how do you do transformation from every aspect possible. Sometimes you do transformation from bottoms up, you do transformation from tops down, you will do a leadership transformation, you will do team transformations, many. But I touched upon like 3 things which are like, more like, I can't think of this happening so easy. So which is why I just wanted to give you easy examples, again, to open your mind. Now, I come to the second part of my presentation, where I'm going to talk a little bit about me, which I've never done, by the way. All my presentations have always been about digital transformation. So even though if I talk about an hour-long presentations, I've always talked about RPA, skills of future, women in tech, what can we do, how can we become an organization that can thrive in transformation, how are we transforming, what are the examples, what are the use cases, stuff like that. What I've never done is talk about how I transform. And I think that was the ask from the CEO Bhaskar here. And I think it was the first time that I think I went back to my presentation. I was like, okay, what do I do? And that's when I realized that the reality is I didn't start my job as a transformation leader. I never did. If somebody said 20 years ago, Meera, this is what you will be doing, I'm like, no way. I have no idea what this field is. I have no idea what to do in this space. I mean, ask me to do like the way I think just my, the speaker before me said that she started with coding, she walked away from coding, eventually went back to coding. That's the reality today, right? I mean, if somebody said that transformation is what you would be doing, or you would be speaking about transformation, I would have said, no ways. This is not something that I would have done. Because I didn't imagine myself doing this. I was like very happy being a very process. I was all about governance. I was all about like, oh yes, I love strategy and I only do strategic initiatives. Then I realized, guess what, transformation is a strategic initiative. And that is how I basically looked at life. I think I have another example, sorry. I have a bonus example here. This one is my favorite because I think this has an interesting story. So this was, I think, I don't know how many of you recognize what the left-hand image, I think it gives away, right? It's an airport image. So one of the trips that me and my husband were taking before we had a kid, annual vacations, we used to be very big on, we still are. We were going to Bali and we were like, okay, we are so excited, we're all set. There's this Make My Trip lady who's fantastic. She was going to go on her marriage leave. She said, I need this bonus, so please go on this vacation. And we're like, yeah, we'll go on this vacation. We all were like, all set. I go to the airport, super excited. All my colleagues are on leave. I'm on leave. I've packed. I'm super excited. And there I am, standing in the queue after like, for almost like, my husband's very particular about time, by the way. Let me not call him words right now, but yes, he's very particular about time. So we landed up being there early. Even though we were early, we were like the first one, almost the first ones in the queue. When the queue opened, the counter opened, these guys like looked at me and they were like, so do you want to, let me take a look at the tickets. And they looked at the tickets and they said, you can't board the flight. We're like, why? Like, why? Why? What is the reason? And they're like, we have just such a big queue right now, we can't talk to you, move aside. And I was like ready to cry. I was like, I cannot go back home right now. I have applied for chutti, which is very hard for me to do. And I am here on my vacation. I need to go on this vacation. I need to get on that flight no matter what. I saw the whole queue go through. I see the second set of queues go through. Then finally a manager comes in and asks me, so what happened? Why are they standing here? Are they like a threat to the airport or what? And this was like pre-COVID and stuff, right? So they were like, what is this? Why are they standing here? So I was like, I just looked at him and I said, I don't know, they're not letting us board. Then he said, oh, that's because you're going from here to Singapore in a high cost carrier, from Singapore to Bali. You're going to go, you need to transit. I said, I will not transit. Give me an employee who will sit with me, who will walk with me. I will be with your employee. I will go with Singapore Airlines. I will make sure I don't step out of the line. I will cross that bridge and I will not step into Singapore. I promise you, and blah, blah, blah. My husband's like, that's not how it works. So then I'm like, no, let me negotiate, because I'm a Gujarati, so I was like, I will negotiate. So, and then that guy looks at me, he's like, easy, why don't you just buy a high-cost carrier to continue your journey through? I said, really? Why didn't we know this 2 hours in advance? And this is the last final boarding call I can hear in the background. He's like, yeah, do it right now. So we were like, oh, let's do it, let's book the tickets and all that. And we managed to go on the thing. Today, if I go to the airport, and this has happened to me again, second time. When I go into the airport right now, I go into the kiosk and somehow, again, I'm like, yeah, this is so much more easier. I'll never have a failure and blah, blah, blah. I go ahead and, because now I know that you cannot do a transit. So every time we take a connecting flight, we're like, we have to make sure it's not a transit. So then you're like, right now, I went to the airport and I did my swipe with my daughter this time. And it said, can't board. I was like, what? Again? Like, what mistake did I do? And I think this is domestic. I am an Indian passport holder. What is the problem? Blah, blah, blah. And then this guy comes and luckily, instantly in the next 2 minutes, the guy comes. He's like, no, there's some overbooking. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll sort it out. He comes back and it's done. It was all done in like 5 minutes. And I was like, I didn't have to cry. I didn't have to stand in the queue for 2 hours. I didn't have to beg. I didn't have the manager to come and look at me like with threatening eyes, like, oh, are you a terrorist or what? Why are you standing in the, like, without the queue and stuff like that? I was like, I didn't have to go through all of that. It was so much more easier. That is the reality. So if I see it as a consumer as well, I see a lot of things changing. And the interesting thing is, exception management in all of this is what I realize as a takeaway. For me, I think exception management is very, very important because I've been in the consumer world for so long and even supporting the consumer business for so long that I know that exception management is where your customers will stay with you or decide to move out. So this is where I feel like today what we are doing with all of this transformation is handling that exception management way more efficiently than we ever did. So, looks like the font still didn't work. So yes, we tried editing the slide and for some reason it wasn't working, so sorry about that. So one of the things that, like I said, I have to talk about me. And if I have to talk about me, I think many things again come to my mind in terms of why did I look at, evolution of Mira, for example, if I were to say it, and that's a little more gyan. The reality is that I went through so many job changes. And I think most of us, if you've worked for a couple of decades, you will have this as a reality. Even though I've been with the same company for the longest period of time, I have done more than this slide can fit in. A lot more than the slides can fit in. I just put it at a macro level, like, oh yeah, this is all part of strategy. Let me combine these 3 things. Let me combine these 4 things. Despite that, I've had like close to 15 job changes. And I've had like more than 22 managers. And I'm not counting people who were like for a week, which happened in the last 3 months, I think 3 times. So yeah, less than a week. So I'm not counting them because, the system had systemic errors, because they had to move out. So yeah, they're not leaving the company, but they just had to move to a different role. So it has happened so many times to me. Now, one thing that stands out when I look at a career graph like this, and I'm sure if I look at your career graph or anybody's career graph, you did not start off where you are today. 1, you started off with something else. You kind of moved to wherever you are purely based on, say, somebody spotted you, or you realize that, hey, I like what she is talking about or what he is doing. Let me try to figure out if there is an option. That's when you kind of make sense out of your life. When there is a chaos like that, you make sense out of your life something by trying to understand. So while that was macro enough, what is still like maybe a 5,000 feet or a 10,000 feet view of Mira's career? And that's where I kind of just came up with a little more logic, like, I think I understand now. I've predominantly been in operations. I've done a lot of people management. I've done transformations, and they're all part of strategic initiatives. And that's where my roles are. What businesses have I supported? But the reality is, if each of these roles, and just 3 weeks ago, my role changed, so I'm no longer part of transformation. I'm part of communication now. So I had the global communications for the finance CEO. So the reality is that and I have never done communications. I don't understand communications. I was like, just because I did a talk doesn't mean I can do communications. That's what I went back to the leader and I said, do you really think I can do this for you? I don't think I can cater to you. They said, no, this is what I think you're born to do. And I was like, no, I was never born to do communications. I never did it in my life, and I don't want to do it. So there was a lot of back and forth and all of that. But then I realized, I went back to fundamentally looking at my career graph. I have always changed my jobs. I have always taken risks. It's because it gives me the one thing I always ask for from every single role. Do I get to learn something new? Because if I get to do the same thing over and over again, I'm not a robo. And don't get me wrong, but I don't want to be a robo. I don't want to do the exact same thing every single day. I want to do something new. I want to figure out something new. If I've delivered something and it's a success, that's what my leader asked me, and this is where I will ask you. I delivered a program last year for about 4,000 employees. It was a super hit. I thought I'd continue in it because I thrived. I did a great job. I got lots of appreciation. People loved it. I loved it. I enjoyed every single day because every day was a firefighting. Every day was different. I said, this is the life I can live for the next 20 years. So my senior exec came in and said, Meera, what are you going to do next year? I said, I'm going to continue with this program that I launched, which is Digify. So, and that was democratizing automation in the whole of the company. She said, no, you're not going to do this. You know how to do this. You know how to deliver this. And I know it will be successful in the year 2 as well. You're not doing this. I said, but that's exactly what I've grown up with. If you're doing something, you're successful, you continue at it. Maybe you add another thing. I'm willing to add something more to it, but I want to continue because this is a short way of success. And she said, no. And that even today scares me, because every single day when I wake up, I'm still asking myself, because it's just been 3 weeks, am I in the right place? Can I even deliver this? Can I even make it happen? But that's the reality, continuous learning. I was asking even ISB guys, do you have any course on communication? I need to up my skill, I need to do something. The second thing that for me in all of this, my whole career graph that you saw, right? Very busy slide. The second slide, little bit better. When I had to present again to another senior exec, and I had to ask for, I want this. I want something, I want to be you someday. So he said, come back with your slide, I don't like it. I said, but this is the reality, this is my resume. I said, if you see my resume, it's even worse. It's got so much of, because I've done so much more. I said, I've already compressed it. So then he said, no, come back again. So I prepared this. And he was quite impressed. And he said, wow. So I managed about 50 to 150 people. I call it the people impact slide. And then I did programs that impacted about 1,000 people. I eventually went on last year to deliver projects that was almost a very big scale, 4,000 plus employees. We're not counting some contingent workers and all of that, but yeah, if that was included, this would have been double the number. So the reality is that there is a way to look at how you did things, adapt to that change, how you're viewing it. The same resume is coming in 3 different ways. You're adapting to your circumstances, you're adapting to the requirement that there is, plus you're adapting to the requirement that some of your leaders will question you, will throw you out of your comfort zone, will say, is this what you want to do? And that is where I would say you need to look at your second aspect. The last one, and I think that's it. I have 3 pointers. I think one of the things, as you can see from this, is that I've done 50 plus talks, and on various topics, like I said. One thing that it kind of leaves me with is what I think I suck at is personal branding. But then I say I suck at it when I meet people and they're like, but you do a good job of it. And I'm like, no, I don't. And again, reflect back. Things that we think we are still not good at, it's a possibility we are. So most women struggle with personal branding. I know this because I see every single one is like, oh yeah, I can do this? Yes, I can do it. Like my daughter yesterday was a spell bee test and she knew the spelling of unanimous. Her friend did not, and she started with something else. She knew the answer, she didn't raise her hand when ma'am said, anybody wants to raise their hand. Who knows the spelling of unanimous? She said, because nobody raised. Then I said, ma'am, can I have a go at it? I wanted to take that, mama. I just needed to try it. It's okay. So ma'am said, okay, I won't judge you if you fail this. She said, I nailed it. I realized even though I bring her today in a very neutral environment where my husband cooks, I cook, he cleans, I clean, we are bringing her up in an environment where there's no gender bias as much as we can. The reality is women suck at saying, yes, I can do this. I have done it. I know I can do it. So we don't raise our hands. We will not say, I'm good at this, I have delivered this, or I make this happen. I would say go back and look at your resumes. Go back and look at your experiences. You could have even delivered it at your personal front. That's the interesting thing. And I think men are usually good. That's what statistically there's a study, I will quickly talk about it and I'm done with the talk, is if there's a job that you need to apply for, women will wait to match almost about 95 to 100% of the profile. Until then, I see a lot of nods, right? But men, and I talk to my husband all the time, I'm like, how did you apply for it? You don't even know this. We both how did you do this? And he's like, 60%, 50% chalta hai, I will do it. And I was like, how can you do it at 50%? What about the rest of the 50%? He's like, we learn, big deal. The reality is even I'm going to learn. Even at 95% I'm going to learn. So why am I not willing to take that chance? Why am I not willing to raise my hand? So yes, that's the thought I will leave you at. And with that, let's see if you have any questions. And so that's why I end with a quote, as always. Yes, please.